was out there first. So what does he do? He finds the giant stone in his vision that he'd had. And so he blasts the thing and digs it out and creates this wonderful room, living space with stairs, with oven, stove, the whole 9 yards inside of this rock, inside a giant rock.
Oh,
so
wow.
He was out there from the 30s, and he was a follower of Nikola Tesla, and he was I guess knew Nikola Tesla, and actually had was a follower of Dr. Rudolf Steiner, which is another metaphysicist. So, anyways, the nickname for him out there that they called him Crazy Kreitzer, because he would tell people that UFOs the size of dirigibles would come out the rock. So everyone thought he was a nut, but he wasn't a nut, because he literally built this and dug this thing where at the most he built everything where it was literally perfect, warm in the winter and very cool in the summer. I used to play inside that as a little kid. There used to be a piano. I used to play piano down there. So after he had died, and there's two sides of the story, but anyways, bottom line is that the authorities came out and wanted to question him on some various things. They thought he was a German spy, and because he had rebuilt a shortwave radio and he spoke German. He was of German descent, so he spoke German. So they thought in 1941 that he was doing some sort of spying, and so when they came out there, that he wouldn't come out of the outside of the rock. So they put they threw a smoke bomb down there, and lo and behold, he had dynamite and he had blasting caps, and he got blown up. Got completely eviscerated by the cops down there because he wouldn't come out. So, but again, he had already made contact with my uncle and aunt, and the whole family. They would go out there all the time, and they would stake this miner with various things to kind of keep him alive. And then eventually they came out, in 47, my uncle, grandmother, aunt, they all came out there. And they all homesteaded, and that's how that thing happened. But it really the whole story begins with Frank Kreitzer essentially promoting my uncle and his uncle about all this massive fortune that he had saw in a dream. I don't think he ever got I don't think he ever found the minerals out there. But anyways, that's where the story began. It's really interesting. So he literally gave his life to the whole story, but again, no one really the space thing and the space channeling and some of the stuff that he was doing with the extraterrestrials. There's very little information. However, I got to talking to various insiders, about this, and then the stuff kind of came up. But so he's in the story too. I actually I treat him and my uncle very well on this information, but I kind of, all these people are very colorful. I mean, they're so extraordinary. Number one, I mean, who wants to live out in the middle of the desert in the 1940s, 1930s? I mean, it's pretty wild.
That what I find. What I find is so interesting that the authorities, would think, because he built, or rebuilt a radio that he could talk on, and because he could speak a little German out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, what could he be spying on? From what you're saying in that area, I mean, was there any big military bases or anything close by?
There was 29 Palms, which actually is on the back side of that thing, one of the largest marine bases in the country. But still, I mean, I just think it really went kind of a situation where they were just curious, and it just got out of hand, which that happens. And he was eccentric in his own self. He kept on putting up fences. He would try to fence everyone out, and there were ranchers who were had their cattle out there, and he wanted to keep everyone out off of what he perceived as his domain and what have you. So but they referred to him as Crazy Kreitzer, and he was eccentric but a brilliant man. And so anyway, so yeah, that's kind of a. But yeah, as far as a character in a movie and a character in a book, I mean, it's like the stuff lands in your lap, and you say, "Hey, wait a minute, this would be really interesting, and fascinating to basically, And I have a guy, and I've been talking a guy named Rudolph Martin that I absolutely want him to play. I've actually we've cast a couple times. We had a couple of fits and starts with this thing here, so. But one guy, Rudolph Martin, who's a character actor, who's done all kinds of things like 21, a lot of television, what have you. He's actually of German descent, and he's literally a carbon copy of Frank Kreitzer.
Oh,
so yeah. Originally, Chris Christopherson was. We've had a lot of celebrities who basically kind of bumped up, but there just hadn't been any real money, as far as that. I mean, originally we had. Some ex-people, I don't know what level they were, that had worked for Warner Brothers. They were involved with it, and it kind of got just kind of sidetracked and what have you. They kind of wanted to monkey around with a lot of different stuff that they didn't know what they were doing, and and we've had a couple of close calls, with some real, but we just haven't had any real stickum as far as that. And I keep thinking that it's my hope that maybe just at the time, But Rudolph Martin told me this. He says, "Listen," he says this will get made. He says because they're running out of stories. He says and if you go check, if you're like me, you look for something to watch on Netflix or Apple or whatever you're looking for. It's 45 minutes before you can find something you can possibly digest, even watch now. So they really are running. They're really hurting for content. But this is original Americana. Incidentally. The Chinese came to there. I don't know how. I had this one person. She was working for me to helping me, and she was really good. I met some really interesting people. But anyways, she was from Mongolia. Her father was a Mongolian ambassador. Anyways, so she'd contact these people from China, and they came out and flew out to LA, and so we went there and talked to them. And they liked it. We had translated it into Chinese, the screenplay, and one guy in their thing spoke English. But what they wanted to do is they wanted to buy the screenplay, pay me money, and get me out. Which was not going to happen. That's not going to happen. But anyways, they wanted to give me a certain amount of money, and it wasn't enough. But and take it back to China. And I kept on but I did ask him. This one guy kind of spoke English, and he goes, I go, why would you guys want to do a UFO show about this thing out here? And he just smiled at me. He says Chinese people love Western Americana, and it dawned on me, because this is because we have the of course the cowboys and Indians genre. We all love John Wayne and the whole thing there, and that's a whole flavor of everyone got. And then kind of this is part of the next step as far as this is kind of a Western with the whole UFO bent, but it's all Western Americana. And so I was just kind of fascinated as far as what their opinion was. Yeah.
No, I really think it has some good from just you talking about it. I mean, with the Howard Hughes connection, I mean, it would be really rich in a movie. I mean, Howard Hughes flying his plane just to get a piece of pie, eccentric person, blowing a hole and making a place to live in a big, huge rock, and then, accidentally or whatever, getting blown up by the cops thinking that he's a spy. I mean, right there is a good plot for everything. And then the UFOs on it. And if I remember right, the area is supposed to be really rich for sightings, of UFOs. And there's a few places in this country that, are kind of rich for that. And I don't know. I really think it would make a really good movie from everything.
I would think so, too. Speaking of Howard Hughes had all kinds of sightings. Obviously, he's a pilot, and so, he was out there, and that's what kind of linked him and my uncle, because they both had experienced these UFOs and what have you. And so yeah. In fact, I have a big thing of that as far as one of his one of his sightings. As far as that, I kind of because I'd heard my uncle tell me about his sighting and what he had saw, and he actually landed out at Giant Rock after he had that sighting. Had his own sighting. He actually had a sighting over Big Bear Lake, which is outside of LA, and so he started chasing him, and he chased him pretty much out near Giant Rock, and finally I guess lost him, and then he landed at night, which that place is pitch black. I mean, it's just kind of which is a testament to his piloting skills and what have you. I guess my uncle had a couple of very rudimentary lights. But I mean, still, I just, again, if you take a snapshot and just see that, it'd be kind of something. Yeah, it's very cinematic, and it's a fun story too. One of the things that when I was writing it, I really got kind of stuck because, you're always looking for demographics, and whenever as far as the story arc and what have you, and that's it. And it wasn't the fact. I literally channeled my uncle because I was kind of having a little hard time. And I says, well, I want to do this thing perfectly. I want to do this, et cetera, et cetera. I want to make it. And I can just hear his voice. Just write it however you want. He says people will find out what they want to do on the internet, anyways. And I was just kind of getting this whole information, transmission in my brain. And after that, boy, I tell you, that thing it got done quick.
Chad, what I find interesting too, the UFO thing with, Roswell, this was starting, even before Roswell, of sightings of UFOs in that area. And if I remember right, all those people would go to that dome on that ranch or on that property and try to channel UFOs, if I remember right.
Yeah, Wax was in Iraq. They had weekly channeling sessions. My uncle was when they talk about it's this whole crossroads of all these different characters. My uncle just fits in this whole thing, but he literally had a channeling group where they would channel UFOs, and he would literally come, and it was down inside the rock. And he would literally, and there'd be a lot of people there too, and it was all reported that he would literally change, his countenance, his face would change, the lighting would change, his voice would change, talking to these various different entities, and everyone there were just absolutely stunned about this. So yeah. So they did this. I mean, and again, I always look at all this stuff, you talk about some kind of a wacky world, we're talking about this is like in the 50s and I get it in the 60s, but the 50s, this is like, I'm thinking about Betty Crocker, I'm thinking about, Norman Rockwell, and I'm thinking about my Uncle George channeling extraterrestrials. It's like it's such an extreme.
Well, don't forget too. After Roswell, in Washington State, off of Mount Rainier, I think it was 1949 or something like that. There was a report of UFO and from very credible people, and it just started to go from there. One thing you got going for the movie now, we've had Star Trek for many years and all these other space shows. But, for a long time, the UFO thing, people talking about UFOs on talk shows or anything kind of like died off, and it got to be ghost hunter groups for, quite a few years. And all of a sudden, the UFO thing kind of like dropped off the planet Earth for a while. I have found here, in the past year, the UFO thing has really picked up crazy, I've been in broadcasting on and off since 1976, and the UFO thing is just surged back big time.
Yeah, it doesn't go away. I know.
And it's gotten bigger than it has, at least on my show. I do want to say out to the listeners out there, starting in November, the whole month of November, each night during the weeknights, we're going to have a different guest on, and we're going to be talking about, what we're talking about right now. UFOs, aliens, abductions, implants. Maybe your ex-wife got picked up by a UFO or something. But we're going to be talking about that all through November on Night Dreams Talk Radio. I just wanted to put that plug in there.